Hola y bienvenido a Learn Spanish en SpanishDict.com. Soy Paralee Whitmire y soy tu profesora. Hoy aprenderás de la rutina diaria y los verbos reflexivos como por la mañana me lavo los dientes, por la noche me acuesto y mucho más. ¡Vámonos! Ya sabes mucho de español y hoy aprenderás de la rutina diaria. Your daily routine can be an interesting conversation when you meet someone from a new culture. Every person spends his or her day differently around the world. And while you may be thinking, daily routine, I thought we already learned this in the lesson in Spanish 1 using simple present tense. I eat breakfast, I go to school, I study, etc. And you sure did, but there is something a little extra involved when you are talking about things that you do to yourself, where you will need to use a new kind of verb, a reflexive verb. Reflexive verbs indicate that someone does something to himself or to herself, like I cut myself, or she looked at herself in the mirror. A lot of reflexive verbs in English don't use the myself, yourself, himself, herself, ourselves, or themselves pronoun because it is already assumed. I wake up at 7 in the morning. You just assume that I wake myself up at 7 in the morning unless I say something like, my mom wakes me up at 7 in the morning. Phrases like, I take a shower, I get dressed, I go to sleep, all work like this. They are reflexive even though they don't carry around the reflexive self pronoun. Now, as usual, Spanish is a little bit different, and it actually does carry the reflexive pronoun everywhere it goes. And you will always know when you need to use it because it's right there attached to the infinitive. If you look up most of the morning routines in the dictionary, you'll find that they all have se attached to the end of the infinitive, like bañarse, to bathe oneself, or as we would say, to take a bath. Quitarse la ropa, to undress oneself, or like we would say, to undress. Lavarse el pelo, to wash one's hair. Atarse los zapatos, to tie one's shoes. Peinarse, to brush one's hair. Limarse las uñas, to cut one's nails. Now, if you're in the habit of looking up every word every time you need it, then you will see that these are reflexive verbs when you look them up. However, if you already know a word for to brush, cepillar, to bathe, bañar, to wash, lavar, or any other verb, and you just need to know if it needs to be reflexive, just ask yourself the question, is the person performing the action on himself or herself? If the answer is yes, then you need to make those verbs reflexive. Cepillarse, bañarse, lavarse. If the subject is performing the action on someone or something else, then it is not reflexive and therefore does not need the reflexive pronoun. Por ejemplo, en la primera foto, the person is drying her own hair. Se seca el pelo. En la segunda foto, the man is drying a dog. Seca el perro. As long as the action is being performed by the subject on the subject, you use the reflexive pronoun. But you need to know the reflexive pronouns, right? You already know them all, you just didn't know it. If you want to say, I go to bed at 10 o'clock, I would use the reflexive pronoun me. Sound familiar? Me acuesto a las 10. If I want to say, you brush your hair every morning, I would use the reflexive pronoun te. Te cepillas el pelo cada mañana. You just saw the third person reflexive pronoun in se seca el pelo, se. You would use se for all third person subjects. Femenina, se seca el pelo. Masculino, se afeita. Usted se riza el pelo. If I wanted to say we get dressed, I would use nos. Nos vestimos. And if you want to say, you put on perfume, in Spain only of course, os ponéis perfume. And last, you have the third person plural, se again, not at all different from the singular third person, except the ending of your verb will be in the third person plural. So if I want to say they undress themselves, I would use se quitan la ropa. Let's look at the reflexive pronouns just so you can see what we have learned. Me, te, se, nos, os, y se. Let's take one reflexive verb from start to finish. Primero, figure out the subject of your phrase. For all of my examples, you will see the subject in parentheses if it's not to be included in the sentence. Then, remove the reflexive pronoun from the infinitive and put it in front of, delante de, the infinitive. After that, all you have to do is conjugate the verb to the subject and change the reflexive pronoun to match the subject. Let's try one. Here you see yo in parentheses, and then dormirse, the infinitive with se attached to the end, showing you that it's a reflexive verb, and then a las 9:30. I want you to change this sentence so that it says, I fall asleep at 9:30. First, take the reflexive pronoun off of the end of the infinitive and place it in front of the infinitive, but not attached to it. Good. Then, conjugate your verb to the yo form. Dormir is a stem-changing verb where the O changes to UE inside the boot. So, the yo form will be duermo. Good. Then all you have to do is change the reflexive pronoun to match yo. What's the reflexive pronoun for yo? Me. Me duermo a las 9:30. Perfecto. ¿Estás listo para un poco de práctica? Te mostraré una foto y una frase de una rutina de la mañana. I will show you a picture and a sentence about a morning routine activity. The reflexive verb will be in parentheses in its infinitive form. Follow the steps that we just went over. Move the reflexive pronoun in front of the verb, then conjugate the verb to the subject given, and change the pronoun to match the subject to make each sentence complete. And of course, say the whole sentence aloud. I'll pronounce the reflexive verb for you and let you know if it's a stem changer. Listo? Despertarse. This is a stem changer, E to IE. A las 6:30, David se despierta. Levantarse. A las 6:45, David se levanta. Ducharse. A las 7:30, me ducho. Lavarse el pelo. A las 7:35, me lavo el pelo. Cepillarse. Se cepillan los dientes después del desayuno. Vestirse. Stem changer, E to I. Te vistes a las 7:40. Extra credit, irse. Me voy a las 8:15.